Dr. Srineil Vuthaluru and Dr. Pranav Balakrishnan are here to share their 2 cents on how they achieved this great feat. Just a clarification, this talk will be aimed at sharing information about what enabled them to achieve such a position and not the ABCs which all of us can Google. If anyone has any questions, they can drop it in the chat box and the speakers will answer them after their presentation is over in the Q&A session. Please do not unmute your mics or try to share anything during the presentation. Now, without further ado, because I'm sure none of you all came here on a Saturday evening to hear me speak, we can begin. Over to you, the presenters.
Thanks, Ria.
Thank you, Ria.
Thank you, Cutting Edge, for having us here. It's really an interesting experience to be on this side of it. I was an education and skills rep when I was in third year and final year. So this is interesting. So like Ria said, we'll try and keep it short, this portion of it where we are talking to you, and we'll try and open up to questions at the end. So I thought I'd start off with how our interviews used to start off. Why do you want to be a surgeon? So for me, I wanted to be a doctor since I was in class 7. And then immediately it was I want to do surgery. It's more about the glory of being a surgeon, I guess, that got me going. And then towards the end of my final year, end of my first year, I shadowed a cardiac surgeon. And I enter his OT, and there's a patient on the table with a heart open and ready to be cannulated, and it's beating under the OR lights. And that was it. From that point on, it was always surgery for me. So that's why I got into surgery. So you guys should start thinking about why you want to do surgery and get that ready for your interviews. So I hope a lot of you try for surgery interviews. To start off, I think we both Neil and me wanted to clarify that we really want to break the prevailing thought that surgery is impossible to get as an IMG. At the same time, we want you to know that it is very difficult. You end up working really hard, and you're going to doubt yourself all along, especially because people will tell you it's not possible since your first year of college. But it's definitely doable. But be smart about it. Check all the boxes. We'll go over some of the boxes you need to check and aim high, and you guys will be able to do it. So I'm from the batch of 2013, like Neil, and I'm joining my PGY1 as a categorical surgery resident at Marshall University in July this year, provided visa comes through and stuff like that. Over to Neil.
Yeah. So I'm Srineil Vuthaluru. Most of my friends call me Neil. That's what I would like everyone else to refer me as well. So unlike Pranav, I do not have a fairy tale story to say why I decided surgery. I actually decided very late. It was during my internship, and the decision was more about me not wanting to do just plain medicine, because I just found that going on rounds in the morning and then in the evening and then again rounds, I was just like, that's too monotonous for me. Whereas surgery, I thought was more broad. You have your OR time, you have trauma, you have your general rounds, and you have even scopies, which is quite common in the US. So that was my reason to go into surgery. And again, yeah, the biggest reason for doing this talk, as both Pranav and I agreed, is that there is this whole mysterious aura about applying general surgery. And that's what we wanted to try to, get to, especially our KMC juniors. We wanted to show them that it is possible. It's not something which is, like the Bigfoot or something mysterious. It is possible, but at the same time, you do have to be realistic and you have to know what it takes to get there. And yeah, so I will be joining PGY1 at the University of Nebraska Medical Center in July. And currently, I am working as a non-academic JR at AIMS New Delhi in COVID ICU. So yeah, we'll just go ahead with our presentation now.
So categorical versus prelim it's important to understand the difference between the two and to understand why it's okay to get into the US as either of them. So a categorical position basically means you have a guaranteed 5-year residency. They won't kick you out at the end of the first year, and you're definitely going to become a surgeon at the end of those 5 years. Whereas a prelim or a preliminary position is a 1-year residency, and you would do the same work as a PGY1 categorical resident, but at the end of the year, you go through the application process again. You have to apply and match. A few universities are able to fast track you back into their system as converting you from a prelim to a categorical. It may or may not involve you repeating your first year. So that's the basic downside with the prelim, that the fact that you don't have a guaranteed 5-year future as a surgery resident. But it's still important to understand that it's your first step of getting your foot in the door, which is extremely difficult to do. And if you do join as a preliminary resident, try and get done with your step 3 before you join, which is something both Neil and I did, because you couldn't predict whether we'd land a categorical or a prelim position, because that leaves you free to just prove yourself as a resident. Some programs, again, have the option of converting a prelim into a categorical internally. Like suppose someone drops out from your batch, they'd let you fill in the spot. Anything you want to add, Neil, for that?
No, not particularly. I think you got that covered pretty well.
So what does it take to match? These are just a few of the things. Your USMLE step scores. I'll talk a little bit more about that, and Neil will brief you on that when he goes through the statistics of this year's match data that NRMP released. The US clinical experience, letters of recommendation, research, and extracurriculars. So we'll talk about these as we move forward.
Yeah, so that's what, just going by the list which we provided for you guys. So this is actually a survey which was done by the program directors in general surgery. So I think 42 of the program directors were sent a survey by NRNP. And this is what they answered. This is not my words. These are not Pranav's words. This, what we're advising you is the words of program directors in the US. And as you can see, the single most important thing which was cited by 90% of them was the USMLE step score. So it is very important. That's just how the game is played right now. Obviously, your step score doesn't define the doctor you're going to become, because it's just a number. But at the same time, it is still
did Neil drop out? Yeah. Neil, we couldn't hear you, I think.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so I was talking about the letters of recommendation, which we'll talk about more, and the USMLE Step 2 CK score. So now with Step 1 going pass and fail from January 2022, obviously there's going to be more importance towards the CK score. Most likely it's going to become the new filter, but we'll get to know more about that later. Then after that, we have an audition and an elective rotation within the department. So again, we're going to talk more about this in detail slightly later. And as you can see, the golden theme which I've put up is perceived commitment to specialty. So that is almost like a coming together of all the things we talk about, which basically the letters of recommendation you get, the research you do, the work experience you have, all of them show that like you're committed towards general surgery or any other surgical specialty. And that's why we would recommend for you to do electives in surgical-based specialties. So that's what program directors want to see. They want to see that you're committed to general surgery. You're not applying it as a backup, or like, you know, they want to see that you're really interested, because general surgery program is very grueling. It is 5 years long. There is an 18% drop rate. Only like 18% of the doctors who enroll into a general surgery residency program drop out before completing. So they want to know that you're really driven and you really want it. And that's why all of this becomes important. I don't know if Pranav has anything else to add. Yeah.
Not really. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And then again, so talking about volunteering and extracurricular experience as well as research. So you can see that like they do fall slightly lower in in the demographics of what the program directors want. Not saying that they're not important, but as we have mentioned, as well as you can see from the data from the program directors, the most important things are your STEP scores as well as the LORs and electives you do. Obviously, having good volunteering experience, extracurriculars does go a long way, and even research. So we'll talk about that more as we come to that section. Again, now going over the math statistics as we wanted to highlight. So there were, this is from NRMP Match 2020. We're still waiting for the data from this year. We don't have all the details yet. So this is last year's data. So there were 1,536 categorical general surgery positions offered, and only 69 of them were filled by non-US citizen international medical graduates. 92 of them were filled by US IMGs. And see, this is where we want to realize, like, so IM had 9,127 positions, so almost that's 6 times the number of positions. And out of that, 2,100 were filled by non-US IMGs. So the point being that it's just that your odds of matching just statistically are definitely lower in general surgery as compared to IM. That being said, it's not that it cannot be done. It's just that you should be very aware about what you're getting into and what it requires. Yeah, again, so these were, again, data from NRMP Match 2020. And this is what you can see. The average scores for someone who matches like a step 1 score of 242 and a step 2 score of 246. Obviously, these are averages. And same thing with the research experiences and number of publications and work experiences. So if you can see the non-US IMG matched column versus the unmatched column, you can see that there is a difference. And this is what we would expect potential applicants to work towards, is that see these averages and try to beat these averages, because these are just averages after all. We don't know what else. So for example, if you see in the non-US IMG matched column, 3.2% of them had PhDs and 20% of them had other educational degrees, such as maybe an MPH or an MBA. So obviously for us fresh medical graduates, that's not an option. So you have to try to beat the averages wherever you can. And if you do not have, let's say you don't have 12 publications, abstracts, and presentations, you need to compensate for that somewhere else, maybe with your volunteer experience, maybe with your work experience, maybe with getting exceptional step scores. So you have to try to balance it out, but this is the checklist you need to try to hit when you're applying for the match.
Just one thing I want to add. So the work experience here refers to both US clinical electives and anything else you might do in the interim between graduating and the interview or your application being sent out. So suppose you have 3 USCEs and you do 6 months as a junior resident somewhere, all of that falls under this. So with steps, like we said, that step scores are really important. Look at the average score and on the NRMP data. So you guys can look at the 2021 data and aim 10 to 20 points higher. The interesting thing is that this same score requirement for a USMD, so a US medical graduate, is about 20 points lower than or 10 points lower than the average for a US IMG or a non-US IMG. So the odds are against you in that sense as well. But be aware that our theoretical knowledge is much stronger than the US theoretical knowledge. It's something that I think most people who have done clinical electives in America realize. Their hands-on is a lot stronger because that's what they're expected to pick up quickly. But our theoretical knowledge is far superior. So you should use that to your advantage and really aim for high scores, as high scores as possible. So far, Neil mentioned something about step 1 being a filter and maybe being replaced by step 2 CK. What does that mean? When we send in our applications to programs, what they do is at a administrative level, not at the program director level, they just apply a filter on the applications that come in saying, okay, we don't want to see anything below 230, for example. So all applications below 230, irrespective of how much research you've done, how good your clinical electives are, what your LORs are, what you've written in your personal statement, none of that matters because you've already been filtered out. So aim for a high score. Besides that, suppose you don't get a score that you want, suppose you, for some reason, don't perform on that day, the thing to keep in mind is during the application cycle, start sending out mails to places. But because if you've got a low first step one score, but you know that the rest of your application is strong, send out mails to the program directors, either directly or via the program coordinator, asking them to check you. The filter doesn't allow them to see you, but if you send a mail specifically and you put a brief on yourself and they find it interesting, they'll definitely consider you. So that happened with me at in a college, in a program in Philadelphia. They probably had filtered me out, so they didn't know about me. But when I sent in a mail, they actually invited me for an interview. So it's something that you can definitely do. So we will talk about what our experiences were and what the resources that we used for the steps. But it's important to know that you need to find what works for you. So give yourself time in the beginning of your preparation process to experiment with the different modalities available, so you know what works best for you. So, for example, I did 6 months of preparation while I was doing my internship, and then took a 1 month dedicated study period for step one. And the main things I used was first aid and UWorld, and the NBME exams. And for the videos, I just used Kaplan for neuroanatomy and biochemistry. I'm going to just really brush through this because we didn't want to spend too much time on resources. You'll have to try all of it out. And for CK, there's no great book really. So use UWorld a lot. And online MedEd was something that I really enjoyed watching. And Step 2 CS isn't there anymore, but both Neil and I had a tough time with the Step 2 CS preparatory course that we went to. But Neil, you can tell them what you did and how you went about it.
Yeah, so again, just to reiterate what Pranav said about preparing, just we can tell you exactly what we did month by month or the way we used UWorld or anything. It's not going to matter. It's because everyone's formula is different. Everyone uses like different resources. These are the main ones which we used, which we do recommend you use it. But how to use it, how much time to spend, that's completely up to you, and that's what you will have to figure out for yourself. And yeah, that's about it. And just make sure that I think definitely one point to say is that like the NBMEs or the UWSAs are pretty predictive. They're pretty spot on. Maybe at least like 5 to 10 points, maybe up or down, but like they're still pretty spot on. And just don't hope for miracles to happen on the day of the exam. The predictors are pretty true. So if you're not getting a score which you're not happy with during your prep time, I would advise you to just take some more time off and improve on your practice scores rather than rush through the exam, because it is a one-time exam and it's just one score which you get to show to the American program directors about how good you are.
One thing I would like to offer as an option is that use all the NBMEs and all the UWSA, the sample paper. So they're basically like 4-block sets of questions. So try doing all of them. Don't leave them out. They're not the NBMEs aren't they're an investment. So I would definitely suggest using them. I would suggest spacing it out. So what I did was I spaced it out one every week, so I could actually trend whether my scores were improving or decreasing. And so for step one, I aimed for my exam date to be 1 month after my first trial paper. So I did UWSA 1 and then booked the date 1 month after that. But again, that's something I did. Don't go by that, but use the exams to actually trend your preparation technique. That's something that would help. Okay, so the electives, I got lucky. I went on the first group that went to University of Chicago. I was part of that. So Pranav Mishra, Anusha Venkatesh, and I went for that. I did my sub-internship with colorectal surgery. Now, this was beginning of final year, so I pretty much knew nothing. It was a little scary, to say the least. But I would say it helped me prepare for my next few electives, because in colorectal surgery, like if you know the common things that happen, the kind of population you see and the kind of diseases you see in America are different from what you see in India. So it was, for me, just learn on the go from day one, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's and things like that. I hadn't even started preparing for USMLE, so I had no clues. I was starting from scratch. while Neil did say try and do only surgery electives, I did do one which was pulmonary medicine and critical care. My reason was at that point, I hadn't yet decided whether I was going to apply solely to surgery or dual apply. So dual application basically means you have internal medicine or some other field as a backup. So I wanted to keep it open, but I also wanted to be able to justify my medicine elective to the surgery interviewers. So I made sure it was something like which had critical care in it. So it's something that surgery is getting into now. So surgical critical care is becoming a huge thing where general surgery residents and attendings handle their own critical care patients in the ICU. Then the big portion of my electives or US clinical experience was at North Carolina, Chapel Hill. So cardiothoracic surgery and surgical oncology, probably the best portion of the electives. I also did research with them for 2 months. So this is just a couple of pictures from my time there. I got to see a Da Vinci for the first time. They did a cabbage with a Da Vinci, which was really cool. So they basically had a conduit they could load onto a staple gun and just shoot it in. They didn't need to sit and suture it slowly. On the right of the screen, you can see lung in a box. So it's called extracorporeal lung perfusion. So before transplanting it, they would actually just intubate the trachea directly, put in the lines in the bronchial artery, bronchial vein, and run something like a balanced solution fluid to minimize edema and toxins and things like that. And at the bottom left is intraoperative radiation. So we actually use the neurosurgery OR, which was lead lined. And all of us left the OR with just cameras on the patient and cameras on the anesthesia monitors, and no one was in the room. And we just let the radiation run. That was an interesting experience. And this is the crown jewel of my elective experience. At North Carolina with cardiothoracic surgery, they flew me out with them to harvest lungs. So we were on a private jet at 2 a.m, flying out to harvest the lungs. I was the first assist. So it was just the senior resident and me harvesting the whole lung and flying back in like 3 hours to put the lungs into a recipient. So that was really interesting.
So these were my electives. As Pranav said, even at that time, even I was not sure. So I did a surgical ICU elective, what he's talking about. An ICU elective can double up for if you're applying medicine or anesthesia. So I would really recommend if someone is not 100% sure, try to get like a SICU elective or the critical care elective, because that goes both ways. You can use that both for surgery and medicine. So I did that one at Cleveland Clinic, and then I did 2 months of surgical oncology and endocrine surgery in UT Health San Antonio. And then I also did a colorectal sub-I in Cleveland Clinic, but that one was cut short in the middle due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. So my bulk of my elective, the most of the experience which I got was only in these two institutions, both very different. And I could see because I first went to SICU and then I went for my surgical oncology elective, and then I came back to Cleveland, and I could see how much of a difference it made, how much more prepared I was. And that's what I would advise everyone else to do electives as well. And that's the advantage which Pranav had of doing an elective during third year or fourth year, is that maybe you can't really impress them at that time because you've not finished your core internal medicine and surgery exams, and you've not worked as an intern, but you do really get good perspective about the system, and it really helps you prepare better for the proper electives which you will have planned in time. We would really, if you do have the opportunity to do electives in third or fourth year, highly recommend that. So I have a few pictures as well to show from my electives. So that was me scrubbed into, this was after an 8-hour surgery actually. So it was a radical gastrectomy with a OJ, and so this was a scrub tech, Louise, who was really, really sweet. So the scrub techs are really nice. Obviously, when you go in there, you have no idea about how different the OR works or how different the system is. So he was the one who basically taught me the ABC of the operating room in the US. So that's the picture with him. That's Dr. Elmi. She was a breast surgeon, one of my letter writers. on the top right corner. Then in the bottom right corner, that's me at the Cleveland Clinic in the CQ. And what you can see is a desktop, which is on wheels. So it's called a workstation on wheels. And you'll see these in the US when you go, where when you're going on rounds, they just keep like wheeling these things all the way around. And all the patient details, everything is on that. And bottom left is me with the football team in down in Texas. And this was basically the first years over there, and they were having their version of Verve. They call it the intramurals. And they were just so nice. Like I was going to the gym one day, and on the way back, I saw them play, and I would just ask them, like, can I join them? So they were like, oh yeah, you can come play with us. So these were the first years there, and they were all really sweet. And that's another aspect of electives, which is really underplayed, is the connections you make. It's not just the ones which, in professional, but also personal. And they really do go a long way, because you do get to see how an American medical student is, the way they talk, the way they behave, their expectations. And that really helps you come interviews, because during interviews, the biggest barrier which we IMGs have is the program directors are scared if we can adjust to their system or not. We might be smart, but the system's completely different. So I think making those friends, keeping in touch with them, I'm still in touch with some of them, it really does help, because you can blend into the system more when you have to go there. And again, I would really recommend you trying to just be casual, be yourself, be normal with the med students and the residents, and hang out with them as friends, because that's a really underrated aspect of the elective. It's not just about the LOR, it's not just about impressing the attendings, it's also about this. Yeah, so this was my crown jewel of my elective. On the right, you can see a picture of Grey's Anatomy, which I know a lot of the cutting edge members are a fan of. And that's a picture of me with my other elective people, my friends there. And yeah, so I was really, really happy about this thing. And as you can see, Derek Shepard is on the left and I'm on the left. That might be a coincidence, but maybe not. So.
So just some tips. I think both of us spoke about it a little bit while we were talking about our experiences. Be professional in terms of punctuality, in terms of how you dress. Be respectful to all strata of healthcare workers and to the patients. Be enthusiastic. Don't don't be extra enthusiastic, but the right amount. You'll figure it out. And volunteer to present. So people know that you're new to the system. They won't have crazy expectations from you, but they want to see that you're willing to learn and you're willing to come out of your comfort zone. So from day 2, I think I was asked to start presenting. So figure out that there are a couple of basic things you can pick up on just websites like Life in the Fast Lane and things like that, with mnemonics on how to present ICU rounds, which you can then modify for yourself to present just any rounds. And one thing that is tough during a surgical elective is the time. So you start your day at 4 in the morning. That's because you have to pre-round on patients for rounds which will happen at 5. And by 6 o'clock, you'll be you may have like a mortality morbidity conference or grand rounds or anything like that. By 7 a.m., the first incision is in. So that's something you'll have to be ready for and get ready. And it's a small change that you'll have to get used to. And initially, it works out well for us because we'd be jet lagged. So just use that to your advantage. And make sure you meet the program director or the department chair. So 2 weeks into your elective, send out a mail to their office and request an appointment. Dress up extra for this. So guys wear a full suit. Go on time for the meeting and sit down and have a proper chat on what they thought about you and what your expectations are of the future. So usually how that conversation ends up is they ask you how you think you did. That's a very standard approach they take. So analyze your own performance over the first 2-3 weeks before you go and meet them. So minimum of 3 LORs is good to have. I think I had 4 LORs in hand. One of them was from a surgeon in Manipal. Some institutions require a head of department letter from your own institution. I had trouble getting mine from our HOD. So I got it from Gabriel sir. Definitely the US LORs are more important than foreign LORs. One thing that you guys can do is get a LOR from your resident as well. So like Neil said, what program directors or interviewers are worried about is us not fitting into the system. So I had an LOR from a resident I worked with in UNC whose LOR was basically about me being able to fit in, and the fact that he felt that I would be a good person to work with and things like that. Given that the places that I did my electives in are not heavy on IMG candidates, so that's the downside of the VSAS group of programs that we have available to us from Manipal. So most of the places do not take you on as residents, but their LORs carry a lot of weight. Neil?
Yeah, so just going off that, I know that the point of the elective is to get an LOR, but please do not ask for an LOR on the first day. Like it just comes off really, really badly because they don't even know you. You don't know the attending, you don't know the system. And if you go and ask, like, it's just not going to look good. What you could rather do is after maybe a week of your rotation, you can get active feedback from your residents and attending saying like, oh, I just wanted to know about how I'm doing, what I can do better, and really do listen to them and try to bring about their change. Obviously, you'll have different attendings wanting different, you to present differently or having different nuances. So you just have to try to adapt yourself to the system. Again, when it comes to asking, with the time it comes to ask your attending for the LOR, do not wait for the last day. Maybe a week before your elective ends. Again, set up an appointment with their office or them and like go to their office, sit down, like, talk about your experience. Like they will mostly ask you the similar question. Oh, how do you think you did? What do you think you could have done better? What do you expect going forward? Like very general questions. So do be prepared. Have your CV at hand because they might ask for it. And sit down and have an open conversation with them and ask for an LOR nicely. They have no obligation to give you an LOR if you've done an elective, but at the same time, most of them are really nice and they do understand that IMGs do not have too many opportunities to get LOR, so they're mostly forthcoming about it. So I would phrase it something like, Dr. XYZ, I had a great experience working with you and your team. I was wondering if you'd like to support my application by writing a very strong letter of recommendation for me. And most of the time, they will agree. So, yeah. And what do you do afterwards? Now that you're done with your rotation, how do you make sure that the LORs are uploaded? One thing which I would highly recommend is when you're at your elective, maintain a summary of what you're doing, like so that you have a record of everything you have done. So that can be like, the cases you have scrubbed in, the clinics you have attended, the calls you have taken, any academic activity you did, like, journal clubs or grand rounds, tumor boards, anything particular, especially like if you have a good personal anecdote, like a patient interaction which really affected you or something which you learned or, working with a teammate, note that down because those are the things which will be added to your LOR when your letter writer writes it. And that's what program directors look for. They look for these special anecdotal evidences of you going out of your way to do something or staying extra, all of that. So note that down. Be in touch with your attendings over email with periodic academic updates. Like let's say you've given your CK after your electives. Let them know that you've given it, that's the score you got, you're happy. Or if you have published something, like let them know that you're clinically active or you're active research-wise. Make sure you ask them to upload. So the ERAS token goes out somewhere in June. I would email my attendings as soon as I get the token. Like there's no point of waiting to email your attendings. The least you can do is 2 months prior to your ERAS submission date, which is sometime in September. You should definitely email your attendings saying that, can you please upload my LOR? Do not delay this. We've had, unfortunately, some of our friends who could not get an LOR in on time because once they upload it, it doesn't show up on the system. It takes 6 to 8 days for the LOR to be verified. So please don't wait for the last minute. And again, when you're asking for the LOR, attach your CV with a photo of you again, because they usually get a lot of students rotating, so they might not remember you. So make sure you have your photo attached to the CV, the rotation summary, which I was talking about, as well as the letter request form, which you'll get from ERAS.
So I think a lot of you had sent in questions on research. This is basically the two of us, I think. The way I played this was I had one case report publication which I sent to BMJ, and I had one cardiothoracic publication which I assisted a senior with their thesis project. So that got published into an Iranian cardiothoracic journal. So those are the only two published journals I had. What I instead focused on during my interview and in my application was that I spent 2 months at UNC learning how to do research. So I emphasized the fact that research isn't great where I did not take part in enough research and I did not understand enough to get into research. But the fact that I at UNC, I actually got to do a case report, a systematic review of literature, a mini review, as well as an original article. So I got to participate in all of these, and I focused on talking about that. And research isn't something that is used as a filter. It's generally used once you make it past that first barrier of your score. So chances are that if you made it past that first barrier, they will look at the rest of your application as well. Neil, you want to add on?
Yeah, no, just that, I mean, obviously it's good to have research, especially if you're applying to academic institutions. They do definitely look at it more. But at the same time, they do realize that you're just medical students. Nobody is expecting you to have like a publication in a Lancet or an NEJM. Like it's what I would recommend is that it's a checklist which you just have to get it done. Otherwise, it just looks empty. One aspect of when you see your ERAS application, you'll see that if you have zero research, there's this whole section which just looks empty. So for that sake, I would say that maybe try to get a couple of publications in. As Pranav mentioned, like learning research methodology is quite important. And yeah, and to be honest, again, research is completely based on the mentor you pick. If your mentor is nice, they will include you on most of whatever is coming out of their lab. So you'll have more number of publications. Unfortunately, there's also the other end where the mentor is not so nice. You have worked a lot, but you just didn't get any publication out of it. But the take-home message would be that just realize that like the scores and the LORs in your elective experience definitely holds more weight than research. But try to get some research or the other done at some point so that aspect of the application doesn't look empty. At least there's a checkbox. You don't want to give them an excuse saying like, hey, why should we not interview this person? Or this person has absolutely no research. Rather, you have at least something that like they can be like, oh, your overall well-rounded application.
Yeah.
So extracurricular, again, this is something which gets asked as well. So as you can see, that's a picture of me and Pranav. This was in 2015 when we went for St. John's Autumn Muse Festival. So this is a funny story which can be told some other time. But yeah, so extracurricular includes everything from sports to fine arts to volunteering to quizzing to committees. How important is it for interview selection? I mean, I really don't think it's that important. They don't really care that much. Obviously, if you include it in your personal statement and it has had an impact on your medical career somehow, then sure, they might look at it. But realistically, like you saw in that list, which I gave you from the program directors, it's pretty down low. Where these extracurriculars do matter is in interviews. They definitely ask you a lot more about what you do outside of medicine, as well as they ask you to take examples from your life outside of medicine and apply them to examples inside medicine. And that's something which I noticed, and I think Pranav would agree as well, that especially leadership experiences, if you have in councils or like sports teams or whatever, they really do ask you questions on like conflict resolution or how you deal with like someone who's disagreeing with you, all of that. So do keep your extracurriculars going in the background of your medical school. Don't just study for your step exams, but at the same time realize that even if you don't have extracurriculars, it's not a make it or break it sort of situation. And again, to mention, extracurricular does not just have to be limited to the committees which are in KMC. They can be anything. If you're into arts, if you're into drawing, someone's into slam poetry, I remember during my time, like anything counts as extracurricular as long as you're passionate about it.
Yeah, and they ask you about your hobbies and stuff too, and there's a category for that in your application as well. Just some more pictures of us.
Yeah, if you see the left picture, that's Pranav. Oh yeah, I see. He skipped it. That was him in a fashion show, which in I think for Verve or whatever. So yeah.
So with bonuses, these are things that are good to have on your application, but are not mandatory. The number of languages you know, they actually ask for a list of languages and how proficient you are in them. Neil, I think, had already joined American College of Surgeons before, maybe. We both finished our step 3 during the interview season. So we updated our applications the minute we got our score results. And we even sent out mails to places we had already interviewed at so that they consider us as stronger applicants. ACLS, BLS is something that is important to have, not mandatory, but generally before you join a program, the program requires you to be recertified. So right now for me, my certification ran out, but they've already completed my online portion of it. So I just finished that. And when I go there, they're going to run the mega code with me and certify me again. And it's always good to mention any other awards that you may have won post high school.
Yeah, and just to add to the extracurricular part, like I think anyone who is realistically interested in joining surgery, you can join American College of Surgeons as a student member for free right now after this presentation. Nothing's stopping you. All you need is a letter from college saying that you're the student in the college. I would really recommend it because, again, there's just a section which literally says membership in professional and honorary societies. You don't want that to be empty. So even Cutting Edge, for example, I guess it's not an honorary society. I know they would want to be, but yeah, like all this does help as a bonus. It just, you just seem more well-rounded and like more inclined towards surgery if you have all of this.
You can definitely include Cutting Edge in your hobbies and interests or in extracurriculars. Yeah. So you don't have to be on the committee, but even if you're a member of the thing, like you're attending this, talk or stuff like that, you can always include that in your application, and it does count.
Yeah, and I think this is the second last thing we're going over, networking. Okay, this is also so underrated. You just literally, networking is so important. I cannot tell you. I think both me and Pranav have benefited from this directly, and in part, we can also like say that like it is partly the reason why we have matched as well is because networking opens doors for you, which unfortunately sometimes your application can't. Especially in IMGs, a lot of your applications get filtered. They just need to put one tick. And this is, as Pranav said, not the program director. This is the secretary, the program coordinator. She just needs to put one tick, like no IMGs, and your application is not even seen. So in that aspect of it, networking is really important, is because if you know someone at the program, be it a senior, be it someone from your elective who can put in a word for you, be it like a family friend, they might just prompt them to have a look at your application. And once they look at your application, if you are really a strong candidate, they will consider you. So don't be shy in asking for contacts of friends and family, be it parents, be it your own friends. Like really do reach out, because all you need is one of them to go through. Like you can reach out to 100 of them, 99 of them cannot pay fruition. But if you do get that one and you do end up matching there, I think that's really worth it. Another thing which happened this year with the COVID pandemic is that many of the students were not able to obviously do away rotations. So a lot of the programs had these virtual meet and greets and open house events. They mostly publicize it on their Instagram or Twitter page, where they have like almost they try to sell you the program. They talk about the program, its benefits, and they also have like a 20-minute interaction session, usually with the residents as well as the program director. I would, again, really recommend you to attend these. I know they'll be in the middle of the night for most of you who are in India, but we attended it, both me and Pranav did. And funny enough, the program which I matched at, I I had attended their meet and greet, and initially I didn't get an interview from them. And then I wrote an email to them saying like, hey, I was at your meet and greet. I really enjoyed this aspect of your program, and I would really want to be considered for an interview. And the next day I got an interview from that program. So I'm like n is equal to 1 evidence that like it does work. And I would really recommend you to pull out all stops. Another thing which both me and Pranav were not into, but we're trying to get into, is using LinkedIn and Twitter to our advantage. The medicine community, especially on Twitter, is very, very big. They're very supportive. I know of people who have gotten research electives by tweeting, however insane that sounds. But yeah, so use that, have a professional, and like, yeah, I mean, obviously it goes without saying, like your Twitter account has to be like professional. Keep like a fake, like whatever, spam account for your other nonsense, but like make sure your actual account is professional. And do use all of these things to your advantage, because you never know which one pays out. You just need one of them to pay out.
And another thing I'd like to talk about is our seniors. Granted, we didn't have too many people in surgery who we could reach out. Actually, 0 people we could reach out to in surgery from KMC itself. But the number of people who are there in America right now from KMC in medicine, peds, and wherever else, now the 2 of us in surgery, do reach out. And, KMC people will always want to help other KMC people. And programs do respect when they get an internal referral. How this year we did have trouble with that. There were a lot of programs which didn't even get to the IMG pile to take in any, contacts, like, mentioning someone and things like that. There was no scope for that because of the way the application worked this cycle. But it's good to reach out and just check what they think and see if they can help. And if they can't, they'll say they can't. But that's the, it's something that you can definitely try. So I'll just quickly go through this. It's important to start shortlisting programs as soon as you receive your token, because there is, I think, 340 something programs that you can apply to. I applied to about 200, which was 100 more than I was planning to, which I'm glad I did, because this year, especially American students applied almost as broadly as non-Americans, because they saved on travel and they could spend that money on the application itself. I started planning on shortlisting programs well before I had access to Residency Explorer. So I actually have this huge Excel spreadsheet where I sorted through the data one by one, going through their websites. And the main fields I used were number of prelim seats, number of categorical spots, their last 5-year average of how many % of their seats are filled with IMGs. While these are not direct indicators, they kind of tell you what your chances are like. And both Neil and I pretty much applied to any place that didn't directly say we don't want IMGs, or didn't directly say we want 1-year clinical experience. So that narrows it down to the top 200 places you can apply to. The other thing is, don't overreach. It's good to have a set of overreaching places. So like, okay, you want to be at Mass Gen, you want to be at Harvard, all that's fine. Have like, 10, 20 places like that. But make sure you have a majority of your programs include places which are more likely to take you on. So but definitely also apply to your, wish list colleges, because what if they invite you, right? So that's pretty much with shortlisting. Neil, if you want to add on.
Yeah, no, just basically apply as broadly as possible. Don't be cocky about this part. Just realize that at the end of the day, you are an IMG. So you have to apply to like community programs as well as university programs, as well as everything in the middle. And yeah, I mean, same thing with the wishlist programs. Like if you do see 0% IMGs in the last 5 years, if you really want to go there, still apply, because, it has to become 1% sometime or the other. Maybe you're the 1%, who knows? So do not give up hope, but at the same time, like, yeah, just apply as broadly as you can, like financially as well as just in general.
Yeah. So it is expensive to apply broadly, but it's something that you can define the terms of how broad you want to go with this. The other thing is dual applying versus single applying. If you want to dual apply, make sure you split the you split your choice of programs based on how much weightage you want to give to each of them. Both of us didn't dual apply, so I'm not quite sure how I would have done it. But it's something you should consider on how you want to split your programs.
Okay, so just coming to the end of the talk. So match day is basically in two parts. The first part is on the third Monday of every March. For us, it was 15th of March. That's when you find out whether you matched or not. And 4 days later, on the Friday, which is 19th of March for us, we find out where we have matched. And yeah, these are the actual screenshots of our messages about how nervous we were initially, and it eventually turned out to be really, really good finally. So yeah, so hopefully you guys will send your friends these messages as well in the near future. And do let us know if you have any questions for us now in the chat box. Oh, one final thing which I forgot to say. So Pranav just got married under 2 months ago. So do congratulate him if you do reach out to him or in the chat box. He is a happily married man now. So yeah, that's that for now, Ria. And
thanks, Neil.
So I think I'll go ahead with a few questions that we got already, and if people have more, they can send in their questions as we start, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to leave on the last screen. So if anyone wants to reach out to us, this is our LinkedIn and Twitter. So y'all can just use that. You can go ahead, Ria.
Yeah. So there was a question about whether writing step 3 before your math changes your eligibility for a preliminary position, because preliminary positions are only for J1 visa holders. So there was a doubt about that.
So J1 is the most prevalent visa for us. Very few programs have H1B and F1 offered. MiLE is lucky enough to be joining a program which is offering an H1B. So H1B requires a step 3. A J1 does not. And in general, the step 3 doesn't affect whether you get a prelim or a categorical spot. But I would say do your step 3 if time permits before you join. Because if you get into a prelim, you don't want to spend those 9 months that you're there also studying for step 3. You'd rather spend that showing off and establishing yourself and showing everyone that you're the person they should keep.
Okay, that's great. Could you just run down the process of applying to electives, like just briefly, so that people get an understanding of how that works?
Neil, you want to go?
Okay, yeah, sure. So, I mean, this is for KMC students particularly. So KMC students have a couple of different options for applying to electives. I mean, I personally did not get to use them as much. So you have VSAS, which is the most common portal. I think you have to register with Dr. Sindhura Lakshmi to activate the VSAS account. And apart from that, our college is lucky enough to have some MOUs with a few universities in the US. So these are colleges, I know a few of them, like Ochsner, UChicago, University of Minnesota, Temple University. So these are the 4 which I know, but there's definitely a list. And our college does send people for electives. I mean, obviously, this is in the non-COVID time, which I'm talking about. So they do send people for electives to these particular colleges. But how they send them and how they're chosen and all of that is I have no idea, and it's not transparent at all. So I would really recommend, I don't know if someone from council is on, the KMC Student Council, but please try to work on that so that it's transparent, because both me and Pranav, unfortunately, were on the wrong end of that, where some of our batchmates got to go for some electives which we didn't even know we had to apply for, and the office was acting very shady about the process. So please do talk to Dr. Sindhura Lakshmi about how exactly that goes and how many spots there are and how many universities there are. because there are a lot of them. It's just that it's a very murky, and we don't know anything much about it. Apart from that, the other electives which you can apply independently yourself, the list keeps changing and updating, but UNC definitely you can apply by yourself. Yale, Harvard, Cleveland, UIC. The thing is, if you're on Reddit, mostly you can find the places to apply. The things you need to apply are most places require you to have a step 1 score. You are required to be a student who is still enrolled in college, so be it in either in college or an internship. Some of them will require a letter of good standing from the dean, your transcripts, and
you might need LORs from the college.
LOR as well. Yeah, so it's just it's an online application most of the time, and you could just go about seeing which ones are open. Unfortunately, for COVID times, I don't have too much information to tell you. I just know that UNC did open up, talking to some of my juniors. And again, with the electives, as with applying for in ERAS, like apply broadly, apply to a lot of different places, and hopefully you'll get 1 or 2 good, strong university electives.
One thing I can say is that UNC really likes KMC students, and they've been taking on a lot of students. So it's a good place to apply to. They do not really take on IMGs. For example, I did not get an interview despite having spent 4.5, 5 months there. But their LORs do carry a lot of weight, because it was actually mentioned in my interview that, oh, you have this LOR from, this person in cardiothoracic surgery, and it was very well received. And in terms of timeline, look 4 months ahead apply 4 months before you plan to be there. That's it. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's great. There was another question that came in that what is an ideal time to take each step? And what are your thoughts on that?
I think we'll both go on this question. There is no correct answer to this, especially with step 1 becoming pass-fail. If it was pass-fail for me, I would probably try and take it end of 3rd year, just so that I can try and apply the same year I graduate. But when I took step 1, I started studying with internship for 6 months. Then I took 1 month off for dedicated study, and then took the exam. And then I rejoined internship, studied for 1 month while doing my internship, and then 1 month of dedicated, and then again step 2. So that's how I broke it up. But different people need different amounts of dedicated, and you'll be the best judge of how much time you need for that.
Yeah, no, again, I don't have an answer for someone who says when the best time to take step is. It completely depends on you. Obviously, with step 1 going pass-fail, it just seems like a good idea to get it done in at least 2nd or 3rd year, because if it's pass-fail, I feel that is very doable, versus a scored exam. It was quite risky to take it in 3rd year, especially again in KMC, because 3rd year is not as chill as it's in some other colleges. Like our combat department is pretty strict about passing people. So don't know when exactly, but the advantage of taking it early would be that you can go for electives earlier as well. I know that the college used to give attendance if you have gone for an elective. I don't know if that's the case anymore, but I think they most likely will, as long as it's a proper elective and not just like an observership of some sort. And taking step 2 again, you can take it when you're ready is the correct answer to that question.
Yeah.
Okay, I think, can we do 2 more questions, and then I think we can. Yeah. So there was a question on, do US IMGs have an advantage, or is it not too much of an advantage?
That's a tough one. I don't think that I used to think there'd be a huge advantage, but if you just saw the stats that Neil presented from 2020, it's 69 versus 89. 69 non-US IMGs and 89 US IMGs matched last year into categorical surgery. So it's not a major advantage. I think the areas where you have the advantage as a US citizen would be getting into America. Like right now, I'm struggling to get my visa appointment. that wouldn't be an issue. And maybe for programs which have trouble giving, so like some programs actually say they do not offer visas, so you'd be able to apply to those programs as well.
Yeah, I would say as an IMG, being an American definitely is helpful to an extent. As Pranav said, that a lot of places might not offer non-US citizens even an interview because they might not be confident that you will make it on time or get your work permit on time. If you're an American citizen or a green card holder, obviously that is a step which is not a problem. But that being said, the stats show that they're not that very drastically different. So it is an advantage, but probably a slight one. It becomes more of an advantage later on, I guess. Not really for the match, but like at this point, or later on when you're, I guess, applying for fellowships and for research grants, etc.
Yeah.
Some of them are reserved for American citizens. So yeah.
Okay, and I think the last question was, MLE is usually a big financial investment, and like just with terms of surgery, there are not very good chances of you matching into a surgical program. So do you have any thoughts on that?
So it is expensive. It's an expense that you put down upfront before you get into the US. But the way I thought about it was, in the long run, you'd probably make back the amount you've invested in the first 2 years as just your savings from living in America as a resident, be it in surgery or IM or whatever you get into. Because you get paid a salary versus in India, if you wanted to do surgery, you would have to be in the top, 1,000, 2,000 ranks to get a good government college where you actually make money versus getting a private college where you still be paying huge amounts of money for the next 3 years. That's the way I, thought about it when I was applying. Just be smart about how you do it. There are places, even for electives, that you can apply which are less expensive, that don't expect you to pay a full tuition fee. UNC Boston, the colleges in Boston, they all expect you to pay a full tuition fee for the month that you're there. So those are places where you can kind of try to save money. The other places you can save money now is that Step 2 CS isn't there anymore. That was a huge expense. Along with Step 2 CS, we had to do a preparatory course for Step 2 CS, which was as expensive as the actual exam. That's another place you can save now. And then again, I don't know, NBMEs maybe Step 1 you don't need. So those are places where you can kind of try and save some money. But I would say that in the long run, it'll be less expensive than probably doing surgery in a private college in India with the current scene of fees.
Yeah, no, I would agree as well. And the other thing, I guess, which you can do if you are really worried about sinking that, because it is a substantial amount of money you end up spending with flying to the US and everything, is maybe consider dual applying, so that you at least have a job at the end of the match. If you're very, if you're willing to, practice medicine instead of peds or something like that, maybe dual apply with surgery so that like at least you don't have that thing that, oh, I did all of this, I spent so much time, I spent so much money, and it was all for nothing. So that's another option for you. But yeah, I mean, there's unfortunately no getting around the big major costs of the USMLE process. Just the exams itself are expensive, flying to America, doing electives, staying in just living costs over there. That way, I would say like the Cleveland Clinic elective is quite cheap because they don't have a tuition. You have to pay an application and they have subsidized housing as well. So it's relatively inexpensive as compared to as some of the East Coast electives.
I'd like to just end with a couple of things. So have backup plans. Just because you're applying to surgery and the odds are against you, have backup plans. So the way I thought of it was, I think both me and Neil felt that we only apply to surgery this year, give it our best shot. If we didn't match, or if we matched prelim, next year we would apply to surgery and IM. And I had planned it out even further. So if I was doing IM, I would probably try for a fellowship in pulmonary or gastro, get into interventional, or pulmonary and nephro get into interventional and critical care. So you have some aspects of surgery there. And even before that, when I was really uncertain about getting surgery at all, I actually felt that I'd do 3 years of medicine and then apply through the match again and do surgery. So there is hope for, if you're really keen on surgery, have these backups in place, but there's always a way to get where you want to be. Get your foot in the door first. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, no, same recommendation. Like, I think a prelim year it's still a very good option. If you don't match categorical, I think a prelim is still very good because you have actual US work experience. Wherever you do your prelim, you have your letters of recommendation now from, like, you get to choose. You can, like, choose which one you want to send. You'll have a program director. If he or she is a good program director, they will be willing to put in a word for you with their colleagues. So it is very doable. Even if you don't match categorical the first time, I think surgery is still very realistic. As long as you are, passionate about it, what it entails. And as Pranav said, we both had a backup. If we had matched prelim, we would have dual applied next year for sure, because there is a limit to how much you can try. And that's mostly the recommendation which I would have for everyone else applying as well. If you're very passionate about surgery, I think the first time you do deserve to give yourself a shot, because it is possible. And then if it doesn't work out, then you can go on from, there.
Okay, I think we'll stop with the question session.
Okay. So, hello guys, Mahisha here. So on behalf of Team Cutting Edge, I'd like to thank Dr. Srineil and Dr. Pranav for being here with us today. Thank you, Ria, for moderating our talk. I would like to request the participants to switch on their videos if they can. We'll have a photo with Pranav sir and Srineil sir. So if you guys can, let's get some screenshots in.